The tension at our family Sunday dinner table was thick enough to cut with a knife. My parents had invited my sister Sarah and brother-in-law David, supposedly for a regular family meal, but I could tell from the moment I walked in that this was an ambush. Mom had made all my childhood favorites: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, but nobody was eating. Instead, they were all staring at me with expressions ranging from concern to outright pity. "Michael," Dad began, setting down his fork with deliberate care, "we need to talk." I'd been dreading this conversation for months. At 29, I apparently still looked like someone who needed parental guidance about his life choices. The fact that I'd been living in the same small apartment for 3 years, driving the same Honda Civic I'd bought in college, and wearing clothes that looked like they came from a clearance rack probably didn't help my case. "We're worried about you," Mom said, her voice carrying that particular tone of maternal disappointment I'd been hearing since I dropped out of my PhD program at Stanford 4 years ago. "Really worried." Sarah leaned forward, adopting what I recognized as her concerned big sister pose. "Mike, you're almost 30. You can't keep living like this." "Living like what?" "Like a college student," David interjected. He was a financial advisor who measured success in terms of 401 contributions and mortgage payments, and he'd never understood why I'd chosen to pursue what he called computer hobbies instead of a real career. "You live in a studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood," Sarah continued. "You don't have a steady job, no benefits, no retirement savings. What happens when you get sick? What happens when you get old?" I wanted to tell them that DeepMind Dynamics, the AI company I'd been building in secret for the past 4 years, had just cleared $12 million in revenue last quarter. I wanted to explain that the neural network architectures I'd developed were revolutionizing machine learning in ways that would fundamentally change how computers process information. But I'd learned long ago that my family didn't believe in dreams they couldn't see on a pay stub. "I'm doing fine," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My work is going well, and I'm making progress on some really exciting projects." "Exciting projects," Dad repeated, and I could hear the skepticism in his voice. "Michael, you've been saying that for 4 years. When do these exciting projects turn into actual income?" "They are turning into income, Dad. I just reinvest most of it back into..." "Into what?" Mom interrupted. "More computer equipment? More software?" "Michael, we've been patient. We've been supportive. But this fantasy has gone too far." Fantasy. 4 years of 18-hour days, breakthrough algorithms, and patent applications that would reshape artificial intelligence, and they called it a fantasy. "We're here to fix your life," Mom declared, and I could see she'd been preparing this speech. "Because someone has to intervene before you waste any more of your potential." "Fix my life?" I repeated. "David has a friend at his firm," Sarah announced, producing a business card. "They're looking for someone with your technical background. The pay is $65,000 to start, full benefits, clear advancement path." $65,000. Last month alone, DeepMind Dynamics had generated over $4 million in licensing fees from our computer vision algorithms. "It's a good opportunity," David added. "Financial planning software development. You'd be using your programming skills in a practical way, helping people manage their money." "And there's more," Mom said, pulling out what looked like apartment listings. Sarah found some nice places closer to our neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but clean and safe. We could help with the security deposit. I stared at the listings. 1-bedroom apartments in suburban complexes, The kind of places where people lived when they'd given up on their dreams and settled for comfortable mediocrity. "We just want what's best for you," Sarah said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "We want you to have stability, security, a normal life." "What if I don't want a normal life?" "Everyone wants a normal life, Michael," Dad said firmly. "The people who say they don't are usually the ones who can't achieve it." "But what if I told you that I am achieving something? What if I told you that my work is actually more successful than you think?" "Then I'd ask you to show me bank statements," David said bluntly. "Show me a salary. Show me proof that this computer thing is actually working out for you." The computer thing. 4 years of developing neural networks that could learn and adapt in ways that nobody thought possible, and they called it the computer thing. "Look around you, Mike," Sarah said, gesturing at my appearance. "Look at how you're living. These aren't the signs of success." It was true that I lived modestly. The studio apartment cost $800 a month instead of $3,000, which meant I could afford better servers and development equipment. The old Honda got me where I needed to go reliably and cost a fraction of what I could have spent on a luxury car. The discount clothes were comfortable and functional, and nobody in my laboratory cared what brand they were. But try explaining that to people who measured success by square footage and thread count. "We're not trying to hurt you," Mom said, her voice softening slightly. "We're trying to help you before it's too late. You're 29, Michael. Your friends from college are buying houses, getting married, starting families. What are you doing?" "I'm building something important." "Important to who?" Dad asked. "Important to the 3 other people in the world who understand what you're talking about. Actually, important to Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and about a dozen other major tech companies that had been calling me with partnership offers for the past 6 months. But how could I explain that without sounding like I was making it up? "The thing is," David said, adopting his financial advisor voice, "even if your computer work does eventually pay off, and that's a big if, you're missing out on years of compound growth, years of building equity, contributing to retirement accounts, establishing credit history. You're living like you're still in college," Sarah added. "And that was cute when you were 22, but it's concerning when you're pushing 30. I'm not pushing 30. I am 30 in 3 months." "Exactly," Mom exclaimed, as if I'd just proven her point. 30 years old, and what do you have to show for it?" What did I have to show for it? Patents on neural network architectures that would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Partnerships with research institutions around the world. A company that was on track to become one of the most valuable AI startups in history. But all they could see was the studio apartment and the old car. "We've made a decision," Dad announced, and something about his tone made my stomach drop. "We're cutting off the family safety net." "What safety net?" "The health insurance we've been carrying you on," Mom said. "The car insurance. The little loans for equipment that you never pay back. All of it. I've been paying you back." $50 here, $100 there," Sarah interrupted. "Mike, you owe Mom and Dad over $8,000, and that's just what we can document. $8,000. I could write them a check for $800,000 without making a dent in my business account. But they didn't know that, because I'd been so focused on reinvesting everything back into growth. "We're doing this because we love you," Mom continued. "Sometimes tough love is the only kind that works." "You have 30 days to get your own health insurance," Dad said. 60 days to find your own place that meets basic adult standards. And we want to see a real job application within 2 weeks. A real job application. Something with a salary, David clarified. Something with benefits and a future. Something that proves you're serious about becoming a functional adult. I looked around the table at my family's faces and saw something that broke my heart. They genuinely believed they were helping me. They genuinely thought that forcing me into conventional success would save me from a life of failure and disappointment. What if I told you that forcing me to take that job would actually be holding me back? I asked. What if I told you that I'm on the verge of something that could change everything? Then I'd say you sound like every other dreamer who can't accept reality, Dad replied. Michael, do you know how many people think they're going to be the next Steve Jobs? Do you know how many brilliant people end up working at Best Buy because they refuse to compromise? But what if I'm not like those people? What if what I'm working on is actually what? Sarah interrupted. Actually revolutionary. Actually going to make you rich. Actually going to change the world. Her tone was so dismissive, so condescending, that I felt something snap inside me. 4 years of keeping my success secret, 4 years of enduring their pity and concern, 4 years of being treated like a failure when I was actually building something extraordinary. You know what? I said, standing up from the table. Maybe it's time you knew the truth about what I've actually been doing. Michael, Mom said, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm not making it hard. I'm making it honest. That's when my phone buzzed. I glanced down and saw a number I recognized immediately. My assistant, Jennifer, calling from our office. She knew I was at family dinner and would only interrupt for something urgent. I need to take this, I said. Of course you do, Sarah muttered. More important computer business. I answered the phone, and Jennifer's voice came through with barely contained excitement. Mr. Watson, I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner, but Microsoft just called with their final offer. They're offering $4.7 billion for DeepMind Dynamics. They want an answer by tomorrow morning. Should I accept? The question hung in the air like a bomb. $4.7 billion. With a B. I looked around the table at my family's faces, confusion, disbelief, and dawning realization. Jennifer, I said, I'm going to put you on speaker so my family can hear this conversation. Of course, sir. I hit the speaker button and set the phone in the center of the dinner table. Jennifer, can you repeat what you just told me? Certainly. Microsoft has made their final acquisition offer for DeepMind Dynamics. $4.7 billion for complete ownership of the company and all intellectual property. They're particularly interested in our neural network architectures and the breakthrough we made in unsupervised learning algorithms. The silence around the table was deafening. Dad's fork was frozen halfway to his mouth. Mom looked like she'd seen a ghost. Sarah and David were staring at the phone as if it were speaking in a foreign language. And remind me, I continued, what's my personal stake in the company? You hold 73% of the shares, sir. After taxes, your personal payout would be approximately $2.8 billion. $2.8 billion, I repeated, watching my family's faces. Yes, sir. Though I should mention that Google called this afternoon with a counteroffer. They're willing to go as high as $5.2 billion. But they want to keep you on as Chief Technology Officer for at least 5 years. $5.2 billion from Google. That's correct. And Amazon has requested a meeting for next week. They're apparently very interested in our natural language processing applications. I could hear David's breathing getting shallow. Sarah looked like she might faint. Jennifer, what's the current monthly revenue for DeepMind Dynamics? Last month we hit $4.3 million in licensing fees and consulting contracts. This month, were projected to reach $5.1 million. The growth curve has been exponential since we launched the commercial applications of your neural network research. And our employee count? We're at 127 full-time researchers and engineers, sir, plus about 40 contractors working on various projects. We're actually having trouble finding office space for all the new hires. Mom was staring at me like I was a complete stranger. One more question, Jennifer. What's the current value of our patent portfolio? The legal team estimates somewhere between $800 million and $1.2 billion, independent of the company valuation. Your breakthrough in adaptive learning algorithms alone is worth several hundred million in licensing potential. Thank you, Jennifer. I'll call you back in an hour with my decision on the Microsoft offer. Of course, sir. Enjoy your family dinner. I hung up the phone and looked around the table. The silence stretched on for what felt like minutes. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Michael, is this real? As real as the studio apartment and the 10-year-old Honda, I said quietly. You're worth almost $3 billion, Sarah whispered. If I accept the Microsoft offer, yes. If I take the Google deal, it would be closer to $3.8 billion. But you live like, she gestured helplessly. Like someone who's been reinvesting every dollar back into building something extraordinary instead of spending it on luxury apartments and expensive cars. David was shaking his head slowly. I don't understand. How is this possible? It's possible because 4 years ago, I developed a new type of neural network that can learn and adapt in ways nobody thought achievable. It's possible because I've been working 18-hour days to turn that breakthrough into applications that are revolutionizing artificial intelligence. But why didn't you tell us? Mom asked, and I could hear tears in her voice. That was the question I'd been dreading. How do you explain to your family that you didn't trust them with your dreams because they'd spent years dismissing those dreams as fantasies? Because every time I tried to explain what I was working on, you told me to be more realistic. Every time I mentioned the potential applications, you suggested I get a job in financial planning software instead. But we didn't know, she protested. I tried to tell you, multiple times. But breakthrough AI research doesn't look like conventional success. It doesn't come with a steady paycheck or traditional benefits or clear advancement paths. You could have given us some hint, Sarah said. I did give you hints. I told you my work was going well. I told you I was making progress on exciting projects. But you interpreted that as delusion because it didn't fit your definition of success. Dad was staring at the phone as if it might start talking again. Michael, I don't know what to say. You could start by not calling it the computer thing anymore. That got a weak laugh from Sarah. Fair enough. But Mike, why live like you're broke when you're worth billions? Because I'm not worth billions. DeepMind Dynamics is worth billions. I just happen to own most of it. And I live modestly because every dollar I don't spend on myself is a dollar I can invest in research that might change the world. Change the world how? David asked. And for the first time, he sounded genuinely curious, rather than skeptical. Our neural networks are being used to develop new treatments for Alzheimer's disease. They're helping autonomous vehicles navigate complex environments safely. They're improving speech recognition for people with disabilities. They're solving problems that human programmers couldn't crack in decades. And Microsoft wants to buy all of that for $4.7 billion. Mom asked. Microsoft wants to integrate our technology into their cloud computing platform. Google wants to use it for search and voice recognition. Amazon wants it for logistics and warehouse automation. Pretty much every major tech company wants access to what we've built. The room fell silent again as they processed this information. So what are you going to do? Sarah asked finally. I'm not sure yet. The money is tempting, but I'm not sure I want to give up control of the research. If I sell to Microsoft, I become very rich, but I lose the ability to direct how the technology gets used. If you don't sell, David said, you stay in control, but you're turning down almost $3 billion. It's not about the money, David. It's about the impact. I didn't spend 4 years developing this technology so I could buy a mansion and a yacht. I developed it because I believe artificial intelligence can solve problems that make people's lives better. But you could take the money and start another company, Sarah suggested. I could, or I could keep building this company and see how far we can take it. Mom was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she looked at me. Michael, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for not believing in you. I'm sorry for thinking you were wasting your life. I'm sorry for trying to force you into a life you didn't want. Mom, you were worried about me. That comes from love, even when it doesn't feel that way. But I should have trusted you. I should have known that someone smart enough to get into Stanford PhD program might know what he was doing with his career. You should have asked better questions, I agreed. But I also should have found ways to help you understand what I was working on without being so secretive about it. Dad was shaking his head in amazement. All this time, we thought you needed our help. I did need your help, just not the kind you were offering. I needed you to believe in me even when you didn't understand what I was doing. We believe in you now, Sarah said quickly. Now that you know I'm worth billions? No, she said, and I could see she meant it. Now that we understand you've been working towards something meaningful instead of just avoiding responsibility. So what happens now? David asked. What happens to us? To our relationship? It was a fair question. Part of me was angry that it had taken a phone call about billions of dollars for my family to take me seriously. Part of me was hurt that they'd spent years trying to fix a life that wasn't broken. But mostly I was relieved. Relieved that I didn't have to pretend anymore. Relieved that I could finally share my success with the people I loved. Relieved that maybe we could have conversations about my work that didn't end with job application ultimatums. I hope it means we can talk about my work without you immediately trying to talk me out of it, I said. I hope it means you'll trust me to know what's best for my own life. It does, Dad said immediately. Michael, from now on, we promise to listen more and judge less. And ask better questions, Mom added. Questions about your research and your goals, not just about your salary and benefits. And maybe, Sarah said with a small smile, we can stop calling it the computer thing. That would be nice. My phone buzzed with a text message. Jennifer, asking if I needed any additional information before making my decision about the acquisition offer. I should probably call her back, I said. This is kind of a big decision. What are you leaning toward? Dad asked. I thought about it for a moment. Honestly, I'm leaning toward turning them all down. The money would be nice, but I'm not sure I'm ready to give up on what we're building. You're going to turn down almost $3 billion, David asked, and I could see his financial advisor brain struggling to process this. I'm going to turn down being worth $3 billion so I can keep working on something that might be worth much more than money. More than $3 billion is worth. More than any amount of money is worth. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. I'm proud of you, Michael. Not because of the money, but because you followed your dreams even when we couldn't see where they were leading. Thank you, Mom. That means more to me than you know. So what now? Sarah asked. What changes for you? Honestly, not much. I'll probably move to a bigger apartment so I can have a proper home office. Maybe buy a newer car, but mostly, I'll keep doing what I've been doing, building something that matters. And what changes for us? I hope everything changes for us. I hope we can build a relationship based on who I actually am instead of who you think I should be. The pot roast was cold by now, but nobody seemed to care. We sat around the table talking until nearly midnight. Really talking, for the first time in years. About artificial intelligence and neural networks, about the potential for technology to solve global problems, about what it meant to pursue something meaningful even when the path wasn't clear. When I finally got up to leave, Mom hugged me tighter than she had in years. I love you, she whispered, and I'm sorry it took us so long to understand. I love you too, Mom, and I'm sorry I didn't trust you enough to let you in on what I was really doing. As I drove home in my 10-year-old Honda, I thought about the acquisition offers waiting for my decision. Microsoft's $4.7 billion, Google's $5.2 billion, Amazon's unknown but probably substantial offer. All of them tempting, all of them life-changing. But for the first time in 4 years, I had something more valuable than any acquisition offer. A family that believed in what I was building, not just what it was worth. I pulled out my phone and called Jennifer. I've made my decision about the acquisition offers, I told her. And I'm turning them all down. We're going to keep building. There was a pause. Are you sure, sir? That's a lot of money to walk away from. I'm sure. The money will still be there next year or the year after. But the chance to build something that changes the world? That might only come once. Understood, sir. I'll call them in the morning. Thanks, Jennifer. And Jennifer? Yes, sir. Tomorrow, I want you to start looking for a bigger office. We're going to need the space. As I hung up the phone and pulled into my apartment complex, I realized that for the first time since I'd started DeepMind Dynamics, I wasn't keeping secrets from the people I loved. And that felt like the most valuable thing of all.